Now let's focus for a while on Maurice Strong and his incredible impact on the planetary scale green and clean agenda. And let's get straight down to business with a short video from Achim Steiner, UN Under-Secretary General, with a very similar statement to the one that he made to the opening plenary of the Paris Climate COP, just 3 days after Maurice's death in 2015, remembering a man he called one of the world's greats.
Maurice convened the first ever international expert group meeting on climate change, a clear demonstration of how he was way ahead of the curve. He shepherded in a range of vital global environmental governance processes, from the original Rio Earth Summit, Agenda 21 and the Rio Declaration, to the launch of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Convention on Biological Diversity. Crucially, Maurice ensured the full participation of developing countries in these processes that included listening closely to those who were feeling marginalized, as well as indigenous people and those who were the poor in the world. He was also a champion of nature-based solutions. He always saw the human species as part of the greater natural whole. He always identified the incredible capacity of nature to provide answers that even the most sophisticated technology and science still cannot match to this day. It is also very welcome to see that leaders of the travel and tourism industry are getting behind the SunX initiative and are committing to climate-friendly travel, helping us to meet our climate goals. This is a step that I believe Maurice Strong would have welcomed. Maurice will be forever remembered for placing the environment on top of the international agenda at the heart of development, with people and the planet being an integral part of that agenda. His courage, his entrepreneurship, his brilliance will continue to inspire me personally, and I know many generations to come. It is on his legacy that many of us are building today, with the hope that we can address the great challenges of the 21st century with the pioneering work that he was so much part of.
And now we can listen to Maurice himself, talking to BBC back in 1972 about the climate crisis.
It has become apparent that today man's own activities have reached the scale where they are the principal determinants of his own future. For example, we are now today effecting more changes in the composition of the atmosphere, in the composition of the waters of the world, and even the composition of certain elements in our food chain. We're making more of these changes in one generation that have been made in millions of years of human evolution. We don't know exactly what will be the ultimate impact of these changes, but we do know that many of them are irreversible, and many of them could be decisive in their effects on man's future. This question is not a matter of one man or one group of people's predictions. It's a matter of the fact that an increasing number of very serious-minded scientists have produced evidence from a whole series of events, many of them the well-known pollution or environmental problems that have come to our attention, that the natural world in which man lives and on which he depends is indeed deteriorating, is being destroyed in many instances at a rate that is accelerating, and that can only continue to accelerate unless we begin to control the activities that are having this destructive impact. I believe that the nations of the world themselves are impressed with the evidence that we have amassed that suggests that we must adopt a much more cooperative attitude towards our dealing with this problem, that Stockholm must usher in a new era of international cooperation. And I believe the governments will go to Stockholm with an overriding sense of the importance of achieving consensus on at least a large percentage of these proposals.
And I'm sure you will agree that this shows the incredible vision of the man in singling out climate change as the global challenge half a century before it was a popular issue. And we'll hear a little bit more on this from Felix Dodds, another one of Strong's disciples. Felix is a co-founder of SunX and a co-author with Strong of Only One Earth.
I always thought that Morris was a unique individual, someone who cared deeply about the people, and particularly those who were more vulnerable than others. But in his life, he gained such a unique perspective. He had worked as an oil and businessman in Canada, the United States, and Kenya. He helped establish many non-government organizations and sat on the boards of many other NGOs. He'd interned at the UN as a 17-year-old in the PASS office and helped UN security. He came back at 32 as the UN Under-Secretary General for the first UN conference on the environment held in Stockholm in 1972. Morris was ahead of his time in so many areas, climate change being one of the most obvious and relevant to today's conference. An outcome from the 1972 conference was the establishment of the United Nations Environment Programme, of which he would become the first executive director. In 1990, he was asked by the Secretary General of the UN to be the head of the Rio Earth Summit, which would happen 20 years after the Stockholm conference. In his career, he would eventually be appointed by different Secretary Generals 7 times to the post of Under-Secretary General. I wanted to focus on one of his greatest achievements, and that was the shepherding of the 1992 Rio Earth Summit. The core text, Agenda 21, a 40-chapter blueprint for how to approach the 21st century. It covered social, economic, and environmental sections, as well as for the first time recognizing 9 stakeholders in society. This included industry and non-government organizations, but it also gave a unique space for young people, for indigenous peoples, and for women. The idea of stakeholder has had a huge impact as a concept, whether it's in the international negotiating processes, or it's at the national level, or at the local, or at the community level. The idea of stakeholders can be traced back to Agenda 21 and to Morris Strong. The second main outcome was meant to be an Earth Charter, but that didn't happen. But still a very important document was negotiated, the Rio Declaration. 27 principles, such as the polluter pays principle, the principle of prior informed consent, the right to development, common but differentiated responsibility, have found their way into international treaties and also into national law. So played a really important role in the last 30 years or 20 years. The third and the fourth outcomes were the 2 conventions on biological diversity and climate change. Finally, I had the pleasure of working on what would be Morris's final contribution to a book, Only One Earth, which takes the reader from the 1960s to the Rio +20 summit in 2012. Underlying this book and the work of Morris and his unique network of stakeholders is the recognition that thinking globally and acting locally isn't enough. We need to think and act at all levels and in all aspects of our lives if we are going to live sustainably on this only one earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Felix. And now we're going to hear from Jingfen Zhu, the Secretary General of CBC GDF in Beijing. CBC GDF is the China Biodiversity Conservation and Green Development Foundation, and it's one of the most active and significant organizations of its kind in China. China is a place where Morris Strong spent much of the latter years of his life, and he firmly believed that China would be a key to dealing with the climate crisis and to taking a global leadership role in this respect. Jinfei.
This April 29th is the 93rd anniversary of Mr. Maurice Frederick Strong's birthday. We are here to celebrate, to remember, to learn, to continue our journey started by Maurice Strong and for a better world, for a sustainable future. In 19th of last century, Maurice came to me firstly for Global Compact. He is promoting Global Compact to China. And at that time, some Chinese thought Global Compact is rich countries' club. But Maurice told me Global Compact is all countries' club. All enterprises must follow certain new regulations, new guidance to do their business. That is for the sustainable world. We must do that way. Starting that time, we work very closely, and I learned a lot. We learned a lot from him. Not only Stockholm, Real Earth Summit. In this year, we attend the UN headquarters at New York, preparing for the Stockholm Plus 50 conference. We are not here for the conference. We're not here to remember him. We must continue his journey. And the UNEP was started by Maurice Strong 50 years ago. And this year, in China, we are organizing some small workshops to remember him, to learn, to study what we should do for further. We are preparing for UNEA 5, and we want to include as much as important information to remind us from early lectures by Maurice Strong. And thanks to Jeffrey, we have now SunX Strong Universal Network. This is a great initiative. Our foundation from China, work very closely with SunX. We want to promote sustainable, we want to promote the shared future for all human beings, for all lives in the planet. And the Green Growth set it up by Maurice, Jeffrey, Felix, and we will continue to work on this. And especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, when we have a global tourism as it was, no, we are going to have a new one. And in China, we also very actively participate in the COP15 of CBD. And we're also preparing for this year's final version of the COP15. Biodiversity is also a very important part started by Maurice in 19th of last century. Of course, we all know the result is not good enough. None of the recent tasks are accomplished by us. We need a more profound, more ambitious goal to accomplish, because there is no time for us. We need speed up. Dear Maurice, we are here to follow your guidance, and we are here to achieve what you wish about a sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jinfeng. It's always a pleasure to listen to you, and an even greater pleasure to work with you. And I look forward to a lot more collaboration going forward. Thank you again. And next, a word from 3 colleagues whose organizations are providing mementos of this event for the 2nd year in a row, and we're very grateful to them. First, Professor Arthur Dahl, on behalf of ECPD, the European Centre for Peace and Development, who are giving a copy of their legacy book, Remembering Maurice F. Strong, electronically to all of you. Then Miriam Villela, Executive Director of the Earth Charter Institute in Costa Rica, established by Maurice Strong, who will provide an electronic copy of the Earth Charter to attendees. And I would urge you to really carefully study the Earth Charter. It contains so much which is relevant to today's world. And finally, in this segment, Jocelyn Favre-Boula from our partner Les Roches Hospitality College in Switzerland, talking about the Strong Earth Awards we are giving together to those students who write an essay on the relevance of the Earth Charter in today's world.
I first saw Maurice Strong in action at the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm, Sweden, in 1972, which Maurice organized and was its Secretary General. It launched the international environment movement. Later, when I was Deputy Director of Oceans and Coastal Areas at UNEP, Maurice asked for my secondment to his Secretariat for the 1992 United Nations Conference on Environment and Development to help draft Agenda 21, the action plan from the Rio Earth Summit, and in particular its chapter on oceans, coasts, and small islands. I last saw Maurice at the Rio +20 conference in 2012. ECPD has published a wonderful book, Remembering Maurice Strong, full of recollections from many of those who worked with him. And we are providing all of you with electronic copies so that you too can be inspired by Maurice's example and perhaps follow in his footsteps to make the world a more just and sustainable place for everyone.
Warm greetings from the Earth Charter International Secretariat and our Education Center that is located here on the campus of the University for Peace in Costa Rica. I'm very happy to join this event today, the Strong Earth Youth Summit. I trust the Strong Earth Charter Awards will spark imagination and creativity of many, as well as significant future collaboration. Mr. Strong was someone who really understood the importance to work collaboratively across generations, across cultures and areas of knowledge, and who clearly visualized that collaboration requires the capacity to respect and care for others, and also the ability to communicate well. He had that kind of exceptional leadership that was able to engage people from around the world to join efforts and collaborate for a global social betterment. He had the art of articulating shared vision and global collaboration. I would say a real model of a 21st century leader. I can say this because I had the opportunity to follow his footsteps from very close in different stages or agendas. First, in the organization of the 92 Earth Summit, then in his efforts to organize what he called the unfinished business of the Earth Summit with the Earth Charter Initiative and the space to empower and articulate the work of various actors of society, civil society, youth, business, through the Earth Council. And then finally in his efforts to revitalize the University for Peace, which was established by the United Nations over 40 years ago. As for the work to move forward with the idea of the Earth Charter, the vision was to craft in one document the values and principles that could guide humanity towards a more just, sustainable and peaceful world. Therefore, in 1994, Mr. Strong joined efforts with Mikhail Gorbachev, and together they launched a process to ensure that the Earth Charter would be drafted through a broad participatory consultation process that would bring together the voices of diverse cultures from all regions or all main regions of the world. And so that's what happened. The Earth Charter was then launched in the year 2000, is actually the result of a worldwide multicultural, multisectoral dialogue and consultation process to identify common shared values that could guide humanity towards a more just, sustainable and peaceful world. However, he and many others involved in this did not want that process to stop there, just as a document, but they envisioned the Earth Charter being used as an ethical reference, for decision making, being used as an ethical compass, and above all, as an educational instrument. Therefore, for the past 20 years, we have been working to implement that vision, especially in engaging, empowering, and educating young people from all around the world to be ethical leaders, committed to sustainability and committed to making this world a better place. Through our education center, the Earthshatter Center for Education for Sustainable Development, and our UNESCO chair that we coordinate here, we implement a Young Leaders program through a 10-week leadership, sustainability and ethics course that is engaging young people that are between 18 and 30 years old from around the world. And with this effort, we seek to expand young people's vision and consciousness regarding our interconnectedness and our interdependence with the large living world, our interdependence with the community of life, and also regarding how we ought to relate to one another in the large living world. I trust this effort of launching the Strong Earthshatter Award. It will spark, hopefully, the imagination and interest of many to use the Earthshatter in many different ways and to work together in this effort of turning our conscience on the fact that we are one Earth community with one common destiny into action. Thank you very much.
At Les Roches, our mission is to nurture future leaders who will disrupt tomorrow's hospitality industry through innovation and sustainable solutions. We encourage not only our students, but our entire community to think outside the box and to be fearless when it comes to making change for good. It is my pleasure to announce that together with SunX, Les Roches will be sponsoring 10 awards, and that Professor Jeffrey Lippman and myself will be announcing these winners during the festival later this year.